So this is our second video. In the whack-a-mole. Alright guys, in this video we're going to continue to create our whack-a-mole, or should I say whack-a-cat game. In our first video we created the hammer and we moved the pivot point so it swings like a hammer. We're going to continue from that point. So if you did create the hammer, open up that project, maybe save it as a copy, or we can continue. If you haven't, you might want to go back to that video. I'll include a link in the description and create the hammer. Alternatively, you can simply download the hammer, again the link will be in the description, and upload it into a new project, or you can remix the project with the hammer in it, again in the description below. So no matter what you got to do to get set up, do that, get set up, and we'll see you on the other side. Welcome Scratchers to part 2 of Whack-a-Cat. Now, before we get started, you need to be where I am. That is to say, you have a hammer that swings when we press space. At the beginning of the video, I explained a number of ways in which you can get here. Just look in the description if you're not. If you are here, let's proceed. In this video, we want to accomplish 5 things. We're going to make a couple adjustments to the hammer. We're going to create our target sprite, that is the cat. We're going to create a variable. We're going to create our scoring algorithm, or the method in which we're going to accumulate points. And then we're going to duplicate our target sprite and spread it about the screen. So the hammer. The first thing we're going to do is name it hammer. So I'm going to click the information icon button and name it hammer. H-A-M-M-E-R. I copied my hammer program, so I'm going to rename my program appropriately. Whack-a-cat. Now the only thing we need to do with the hammer is be able to move it around. And the way we're going to move it around is by mouse, the mouse pointer. So we need to create that script. So I want to be able to control the hammer the whole time. So I'm going to go to Events and grab a flag click. And because I want to do it the whole time, that tells us forever. So go to Control and grab a forever loop. Now we want it to move with the mouse cursor, so that tells you motion. So go to Motion. Down towards the middle, the Go To blocks. The middle one says Go To Mouse Pointer. And now when I click the flag, my hammer is controlled by the mouse and it swings with the space. Stop the program. Okay, the next thing we need to do is create the target sprite. And we're going to use the cat for this. So we got to go into the library. We get to the library by hitting Pico. The cat is an animal, so I'm going to click Animals. And along the top row, cat 1, double click. Now we're going to create the costumes. So the first thing we're going to do is get into costumes. Okay, so now follow this as closely as you can. We only need one cat costume, so I'm going to go to costume 2 and delete it. For this particular sprite, I'm going to use a bitmap instead of vector mode. So down at the bottom lower right, it says convert to bitmap. So I'm going to do that. Just easier to work that way. I'm going to use my select tool and I'm going to raise my cat above for now. I'm going to use the oval tool. I'm going to make sure it's filled and make sure it's black. I'm going to put a sliver of an oval underneath the cat, kind of looking like a hole in the ground. Now I'm going to go over to my sprite and duplicate it. Right click, duplicate. So at this point I have 2 identical sprites. So I'm going to click on the first one and I'm going to delete the cat completely. So I'm going to get my erase tool, I'm going to make it nice and big, and I'm going to get rid of the whole cat.
The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go my second costume. I'm going to make my erase tool a little bit smaller. I'm not going to get rid of the whole cat. I'm going to get rid of most, or at least half the cat, including its tail. So I'm going to get rid of its tail right across and everything below. I'm going to once again use my select tool, select what's left of the cat, and slide it down into the hole. Now I'm going to name them appropriately. So the top one I'm going to name hole, and the bottom one I'm going to name with cat. So now I know clearly which costume is which. Alright, we have our sprite or our target costume, and just stick it here for now. Okay, so we got our two costumes, looking good. Now let's create a script. So what we want it to do is be down in the hole, pop up, and then get back down again. And we want this to happen irregularly and randomly. And we want it to happen the whole time the game is going. So we're going to go to scripts. And if we want something to happen the whole time the game is going, that tells you flag click event. And from control, forever. Now the first thing we want it to do is be in the hole, or go to our hole costume. So under looks, switch to costume, not with cat, but hole. And we want them to stay there for some random period of time. So we're going to go to control and hit wait. Now, like I just said, we don't want to wait for a second. We want to wait for some random, irregular period of time. So that tells us random number generator, or my pick random block. And we're not going to wait from 1 to 10 seconds. 10 seconds is way too long. We're going to wait 3 to 6 seconds. And after 3 to 6 seconds, we want them to pop up. So that means we want them to change costumes. So we're going to switch to costume with cat. And then we want them to pop up for just a little bit. Not as long as 3 to 6, but we want them to stay there every irregular amount of time as well. So we're going to go once again to control, grab a wait block. Not for a second, but for a pick random. And here I'm going to pick from a fifth, or 0.2 of a second, to 2 seconds. So he's only up for a short period of time. So now if I click my flag, that should happen. There he is. Let me whack him. Okay, that's working. So our cat, or our target sprite, is working how we want it to work. Next, we need to create a score variable. It is a game. We are going to be accumulating points, so we need a score. So go to data, and we're going to make a variable. We're going to call it score, S-C-O-R-E. I used an uppercase S because it is going to be viewed by the user, and I want it to look good. So I hit OK. Now, at the beginning of the game, we want our score to always be 0. So I'm going to take this opportunity to initiate the score with the script I've created. So above the forever loop, below the flag click, I'm going to set the score to 0. So this way, every time a new game is played, the score will be set to 0.
Okay, so we got to figure out how we're going to calculate points. And I thought long and hard about this. And this is what I came up with. It's fairly straightforward and not too complicated. So when you think about it, two things have to be true for a point to be registered. Number one, our hammer has to be in the horizontal position. And number two, the sprite that it's hitting, the cat sprite, has to be in the cat costume, or the second costume. Right? So what this means is we have to create a compound conditional statement, and we're going to join it with an AND. An AND is a Boolean command that means both conditions must be true. The first condition being the hammer needs to be in this direction, needs to point in direction 0. And when the hammer hits the sprite, if in fact the cat is showing, it's going to hit the orange on the cat. Otherwise, it'll just hit black. So the two conditions that need to be true is number 1, the hammer needs to be horizontal or in the 0 direction. And number 2, the black part of the hammer needs to be hitting the orange color in the sprite. If in fact both those conditions are true, you get a point. So let's program it.
So let's build the algorithm we just discussed. Before we get started, there's a couple things I'm going to do. I'm going to move the hammer down to the middle of the screen. I'm going to go to the cat and make it costume with cat. We're going to need access to that color. I'm going to go back to the hammer, scripts. Now let's build that compound conditional statement. Grab an AND. So the first condition is black and orange need to be touching. Touching is under sensing, and it's the third block. Now to get the color exact, there's a little trick. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the swatch and click. The cursor turns into a finger. I'm going to take the finger and touch the color I want, black. I'm going to go back to this swatch and take that finger and touch the cat. Now we know that those colors are exactly the ones we want. The second condition is that the direction of the hammer needs to equal 0. So that tells us we need an equal block, which is an operator block. Direction is under motion, down at the bottom. And it needs to equal 0. Now this is a conditional statement, so we want to put it in an if statement or an if block. So we go to Control, grab an if, stick it in. Now we want this to happen the whole time. So that tells you forever and a flag click event. Now what do we want to happen? We want the score to add 1. So go to Data. And we're going to not set, but we're going to change score by 1. There's one more step. In order to prevent the score from racing up, because it happens so fast, we need to add a point and give the hammer an opportunity to recoil. So we're going to use a wait block here. But we're not going to wait for a second because that's too long. We're going to wait for a fraction of a second. So let's do 0.2 or 1/5 of a second. So now let's test our program. I should be tallying points whenever I hit the cat. So I hit the flag. Got points. Okay, so it's working. We're tallying points correctly. Now, of course, we need multiple cats. So what I'm going to do now is duplicate. Right-click, duplicate, and spread them about. Now, you can also use the shrinker up here. You got the shrinker and the grower. And make them a little smaller and add some depth to your game. So it looks like it's further up the field. I'm going to put 5 should work. And one more. And we're good. We are well on our way to completing the Whack-A-Cat game. Stay tuned for part 3 coming soon as we wrap this all up and complete the game. So remember, as always, subscribe if you haven't, like what you like, and we'll see you next time.